Hi, so I'm Elizabeth Jones, and today I'm going to talk about whether authors reflect or impact the society in which they live. And I strongly believe that authors do both, because they typically write about things that are going on in their own environment, their own society, their own government, and they write these things so they can impact society. And we can see that a lot of the times occurring in the pieces of literature that they tend to create. But I do believe that a reflection is mainly what we see because a lot of times literature is written for entertainment. So they write as a reflection of an environment they live in. For example, something that I will be covering later, Moana. It's a beautiful location written for entertainment and it reflects society. Now, although I talked about Moana, the first thing that I do want to cover is this play called Pygmalion, also known as My Fair Lady. You may have seen it, and it's basically a play set in the early 1900s or early 20th century about this girl of a lower class upbringing who's brought up so she's mistaken for a duchess, a higher class upbringing, and this reflects society because class systems were very big in the early 1900s, and it was very distinct in mannerisms, pedigree, the amount of money that they had, and it's very distinct that in the fact that it was a play meant for entertainment, but it still reflected the environment, the society, the clothing, and the play is essentially based and written on this time period. And there was no exact effect of this. It wasn't like oh, look, we're not all just about where we came from, that's not what it means, but it was essentially more about entertainment, which is why I believe literature reflects society most of the time. Now, the novel or literature that I thought reflected society and both impacted society the most was 1984 by George Orwell. It was written in this dystopian setting about the party, which is basically this totalitarian regime. And he lived in this location and he absolutely hated it. And the reason he wrote this is because he noticed, the upbringing of Adolf Hitler and also Stalin. And he didn't like the way that they were running things and how cruel they were and unhumane. And that's why he wrote this book. It was a reflection of society and what he thought was going to occur. He wrote it in the future, like what might actually happen. But it also impacted people because he wanted people to realize that communism brought on these regimes. And he wanted people to understand that it wasn't exactly a good thing because a lot of people were beginning to see communism as something good. It was something that was going to help the people, especially during a time when the US, was coming out of the Depression. We wanted, some sort of assurance that everybody would be getting some sort of, resources to be able to live, basic necessities. So he wrote this book as both reflection and an impact. And that's why I see that. Finally, we have The Last Duchess by Robert Browning, which is basically written about this lady that is murdered from her husband, and he wants to wed some other nobleman's daughter, and it really reflects society because women really have no power. He didn't even get any sort of like weird eye, weird look. It was kind of just like, oh, she's dead, like that sucks. It reflects society. It reflected the power that women actually had at that time. So what we see as a result of literature is typically that it reflects society, the environment that it's written in. The author might get to pick the setting, it gets to pick the environment, but in all, it reflects society, it reflects economic status, it reflects all these things. And a majority of the time, it isn't meant to impact society because nowadays we are seeing more of an entertainment factor. But in many cases, such as Gandhi writing these letters from prison, we do see that they want an impact on society, but majority of the time, I do believe it's more of a reflection. So as I was saying, what we see typically now is forms of entertainment reflecting society, and it doesn't matter where you're from. If you're an author, you will do research. For example, Moana, it's a big thing. They actually had people go to Polynesia and research the culture, the environment. They wanted everything to be very down to the detail specific, and that's how it reflects society. It reflects this environment, the culture, and everything. It's not really to impact people, not a call to action. It's none of that. It's really just a reflection, which is why I strongly believe that literature can be both a reflection and an impact, but typically now what we're seeing is a reflection. And even in history, we do see a lot of people or a lot of works reflecting what was happening at the time, mainly for entertainment. We see this for thousands of years in the past. For example, cave paintings. Do they really have an impact on society? Did these people make these drawings thinking, oh, you know what, I'm going to draw this so that people in the future will have a great representation of what we did? No, that's not what they did. They drew these things as a reflection of society, as a art form, and that's how I exactly see things. Not just as, an impact mainly, but as a reflection, and that's what these authors wrote. Typically, there will be a message, which is why the author writes that work of literature. But many of the times, the message can be purely entertainment, or it will have an underlying message such as friendship is great, you need to rely more on people.